Hello. Today I'm gonna go through my weapons checking box here. If you're a new realm, or if you want to run a weapons check, or what have you, want to help with weapons check, these are the things that you'll need to make sure that runs smoothly. So, the first thing is probably, this is an important one. Well, all these are, but sorry. One of the, in my opinion, more important ones is your scale. You can do weapon checks without these, but to make sure everything is, good, it's good to have one of these. You can pick these up for like $20 online. It's a kitchen weight. You just turn it on, choose the unit you want ounces, and then you put a weapon on it, and it tells you the weight. If the weapon will not balance right, say you have like a club and you can't get to really balance well on the scale, you can put an object on the scale, zero it, balance the object on that, and that will give you the weight. Okay. Then you have a bow scale. So the way this works is turn it on. You take an arrow, you put it on the string of the bow, so whether you have a way to tell where your 28 inches are, because on the arrow it has a draw step on it at 28 inches. So you put the arrow on the string, put this on the string, and you pull on it until you reach 28 inches. And after you hit the 28 inches mark, this is giving me some problems for some reason. After you hit the 28 inches mark, you reach down and you hit tear. And I'll tell you the draw weight of the bow you have. I drew just now 13 pounds on my thumb. Bow scale. This, marked as an electronic hang scale. You can also get them as a luggage scale or a fish scale. Yeah. Another item that you want to have on hand for your scales is batteries. Unless you get a rechargeable kind, the two that I have here are AAA batteries. Now, the next things, weapons check keys. Okay, so you have 2-inch pommel, 2.5-inch stab tip, 3.5-inch javelin, and 6-inch for the flow chain. You just take a weapon and lay the check key on the pommel or on the tip. You don't force it through, you just lay it on gently. If it doesn't go through, it's fine. Weapons, pommels, tips, etc. can go up to 1/2 inch through a key. So most keys you'll see have a 1/2 inch depth to them. So if it goes in, but doesn't go past 1/2 inch, then you're fine. And then this here, you'll just take, if you had a javelin on hand, you would take it and take the base of the head of the javelin and see if it fits in here. It needs to, the base of the head of a javelin has to be 3.5 inches. In dagger here. So that's why there's this here check. So then you have a ruler. So if you don't have a weapons check key, you can measure pommels with a ruler. You would simply just take the ruler, put it on one edge of the pommel, and see if it has 2 inches from widest point of the pommel. And if it has 2 inches, then it's fine. If you have an oddly shaped pommel, or not oddly shaped, different shaped pommel, you have a pommel with a different shape, like this here, what you'd want to do is measure to where it hits 2 inches, flip up the ruler, and put the ruler to the tip of the thumb, and that's within the ½ inch I can be in, so this is fine. Note this is a very rough measurement. It's not nearly as precise as the weapon check keys are, so if you use an actual key, that's not going in at all. But, yeah. So, if you don't have a key though, you can get by with a ruler. Another reason to have a ruler is for checking if a weapon has the required amount of foam on it. So for example, a spear can have, it has to have at least 1/3 padding. That includes the amount of padding on the head, on the striking tip, on the haft, and the pommel. So if you have to, check very small parts, like you need to check exactly, how much does the head have, how much does the pommel have, to factor into how much the haft is for the overall, how much it's padded, it's going to have a little ruler that you can move to the spots that you need to check on it. Another thing you'll want is a tape measure, like a measuring tape. These here, you can spread out, lay it on a bench, and tape it down. And if you need to check to see how long a weapon is, for example, if you have a min red, you want to make sure it's a min red, not a max blue, or vice versa. If you're checking for it to be a max blue, in case it might be a min red, you would just have this here taped on the bench and lay the weapon beside it, and it'll tell you how long the weapon is. Instead of having to pick it up and lay it by the weapon, you just tape this down, lay the weapon by it, and you're done. It also helps to factor how much the handle can be or can't be. A swung weapon can have a maximum handle length of 1/3 or have 1/3 unpadded. So if you have a 36-inch sword, you can have a maximum unpadded handle section of 12 inches. So having this here to see that's exactly 36 inches can be helpful in determining, how much handle length that can have or not, and if it's properly padded in that way. Then you have tape measure. So this is 10 foot. This here is 5 foot. This here is useful for measuring larger items like an 8-foot spear, but also for measuring the distance for archer check or javelin check, projectile check. So, projectiles, for full force, the opponent has to be 20 foot or further, and for half draw, it's 20 foot or closer. So if they're within 20 feet, you have to half draw them. So a lot of checkers will have players stand in the 15 foot to 20 foot range, and then shoot arrows at their back for an archer check, arrow test or projectile test. I don't know how many do 15 foot versus how many do 20 feet. 15 foot is safer. If it doesn't hurt someone at 15 feet, it's definitely not going to hurt them at 20 feet. But I also know groups that do 20 feet, because that's what it says in the rules. So having a tape measure to measure out that length is really handy. Now with that, I also recommend carrying some rope. So there you can measure out your 20 feet or 15 feet, and then you take 2 sticks, tie them around the rope, and jab them into the ground to have a line, so that your archer backs know where to stand, so you're not trying to line them up or lose where the line is, or have a stick laying on the ground, have someone kick the stick or whatever. Having a string into the ground securely will make that go by a whole lot smoother. From there, these are the things I feel a weapons check should have. Now we go into things that are generally just helpful. I don't think these are necessarily requirements, Oh, no, sorry, I'm skipping a thing. A requirement is you have passing tape. Now, I normally carry uh, the yard sale stickers, like they have little dots for yard selling, and they have multiple colors of them. So, if you have a multi-day battle, if you're fighting on Friday, you can have, red be the day for Friday. So the bottom of every palm will get a red little sticker. And then if you're fighting on Saturday, you can make Saturday be like the purple day. You can still have a purple sticker and a passing weapon on Saturday. I don't know where those are at this current point in time. I recently moved and they may have gotten lost in the shuffle. So, yeah. But any kind of passing tape will do. This here is the white thing of electrical tape in the 5-pack rolls that you get for weapons marking tape for the types. I don't specifically recommend this, but if you're holding a practice or whatever, you want to see if everyone make sure everyone's weapons are up to date and passing and stuff. You can use this here for for practices and such. I wouldn't use this here for events personally because I had my old realm used to use this here to mark personal weapons. So the way it worked is community weapons anyone could use didn't have tape on like this, didn't have white tape. So if it didn't have white tape, you can just go and use the weapon. If it had white tape though, it meant that it was owned by someone. You had to ask them permission to use it. I went to an event at some point in time years ago, and I had my white tape marking my personal weapons, and someone took it off saying that because white is used to mark rocks, or because rocks are white weapons, that someone could have mistaken a sword for a rock. I don't see how that could be a thing, but at the same time, if someone says something like that, you shouldn't fight with them, it's fine. But, yeah, so, you can use for practices, I wouldn't recommend using for events. So from there, we now go into, we go away from, things that you need, to things that are nice to have. So, one, is tape, cloth tape, and foam. I use self-adhesive craft foam because I make all my pommels out of it. So for example, pommel, craft foam, this is a 1-inch strip. That's what my pommels are made out of. So the reason why you'd want to have this is if you look at this pommel, it has a nice, good angle there. It's very new. It's a very new pommel. This pommel though is 5 years old. If you look here, this will come up later. But if you look here, you can see where it kind of comes up a little bit. It has a little bit of a depth there. And that's because this pommel was failing. I pommel fight a lot. I grip my pommel really tight all the time. And so I compressed the foam down where it wasn't passing the check key anymore. So I took a small strip of craft foam, put it on the very edge of the pommel, and then covered it with cloth tape to make it pass again. Now, I recommend having this in your weapons check kit because I don't know about you, but I would not like to be in a position where I can't use one of my favorite swords for the day because it just so happened that day I decided not to pass the check for the pommel. And having someone able to have a small strip of foam and a little bit of tape to save that weapon is super handy. I don't know how many times I've been able to help people with that. It's good to have because sometimes people don't often do their own checks on things. It happens, and you wouldn't want to be in that situation. So if you can help people not be in that situation, it's a good thing to do. So I recommend having cloth tape and self-adhesive craft foam, or any kind of foam really. You can use this kind of foam, you can use scraps of blue foam. All you need is just enough foam to bulk up the pommel so it doesn't go through the key, and that's all you need. I also recommend having weapons marking tape for a similar reason. Now, as weapons check, you are not required to mark players' weapons. It is not a requirement. It is not on you to make sure the weapons are properly marked. It is on the player. The player should provide their own tape to mark their own weapons. However, it is common practice for events, weapons checks, to have tape for players to mark their gear. I will carry it with me wherever I go, just because, as previously noted, if you were in a situation where for some reason you didn't have tape on your weapon, you wouldn't want to lose the use of that weapon for that event because you just didn't have it taped. So it's nice to have on hand to make sure things pass. The most common ones that you'll need will be green stabbing tip tape and blue one-handed weapon tape. These are going to be your most common ones that you'll use, because not a lot of people use javelins. They're there, but they're not nearly as common as blues and stab tips. And reds. Reds are more prevalent than javelins, not as prevalent as blues. Also have stab tips, and spears and such also have stab tips. So the most common one is going to be your stab tips. Second most common be your blues. Third most common is your reds. Fourth most common is your yellows. But if you can only bring two, you'll want to bring your blues and your greens. Now, getting back to here. Having some kind of tape to where if a weapon fails, you can mark that weapon with why it failed and put it in the fail pile. Because, let's say, you're going through, you're checking a weapon fails, you call out, hey, whose weapon is this? No one responds, you chuck it in the fail pile. Okay. Player comes over, sees your weapon in the fail pile, picks it up, hey, why did my weapon fail? Well, you were over checking someone else's weapon. And so some other person's weapon check goes there and like, oh, I don't know why this failed. And then they might have to go through and do the whole check thing again. Or they might have to come and find you, or, what if you went to the restroom or something? They can't get you. They have to go through the checking of the weapon again. And the more time you check a weapon, the more stress you put on it. And it's not gonna, if it's gonna fail anywhere, it should fail in check. But you also don't want to overstress a weapon for no reason. If you can mark though why it failed, for example, this one here is actually only 11.92 ounces. Fails for weight. So you can take some kind of tape, like white athletic tape, write on it, put it on the pommel, so that after it's checked and can be removed by the player, this can help to save people from rechecking weapons, which will save your time, save everybody in check's time, save the player's time. It's good to have. Note though that's not required. I know some groups that will actually take those, like the wristbands that you get, they'll take those and put them on a zip tie, and they'll write why the weapon failed on those on the zip tie. It's harder to remove a zip tie than it is to remove one of these pieces of tape. However, if you don't have a passing sticker, you're not going to get the weapon through check, or through whatever. You have to have the passing sticker. So, even if the player removed this, wouldn't really specifically matter. He wouldn't get a passing sticker on it anyway. So, that, and with that, you also want to have a marker to be able to write things down, like that, for example. I think that's it. That's all the things I can think of. Okay. Thank you. Hope that was informative. And I hope that your weapons checking journey goes well. And, see you.